Have you ever looked at a family photo and realized you're the only one who's not smiling? I have. I was sitting alone in my apartment on Christmas morning, a mug of half-drunk hot chocolate growing cold in my hands, when my world began to unravel. Outside, the streets of Nashville were calm, sunlit, and dry, no sign of the terrible ice storm my mother had texted me about just hours ago, conveniently canceling our family Christmas dinner. At first, I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was my mother. Mothers don't lie about Christmas. But as I scrolled mindlessly through social media, my heart slammed to a halt. There it was, a new photo posted by my cousin Sophie, tagged boldly, #FamilyChristmas, #blessed. The image burned into my memory, my entire family smiling brightly around an elegant dining table set perfectly at my sister Olivia's house. My father proudly carving the turkey, my mother arranging her famous holiday cookies, my nieces and nephews laughing with arms full of presents. And through the tall windows behind them, nothing but clear, bright skies. There was no storm. There never had been. My fingertips felt numb as I scrolled through more images, each cheerful face amplifying my sudden nausea. It wasn't just the lie, it was the ease, the casual cruelty of their deception that cut deepest. How many times before had they quietly excluded me, wrapped in excuses so believable I'd never dared question them? I stared at my reflection in the darkened laptop screen, pale skin, tired eyes, and that forced half-smile I'd practiced my whole life, a perfect mask for my loneliness. My name is Emily, I'm 32 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the outsider. The responsible, quiet daughter who didn't fit into my family's vibrant puzzle. But something about seeing that Christmas photo shattered a barrier inside me. A voice deep in my chest, one I'd silenced for far too long, whispered softly yet fiercely, "Emily, how much longer will you accept being invisible?" I didn't know it then, but the discovery of that photograph wasn't just a betrayal. It was the first thread in a tapestry of deception I was about to unravel, a dark web of family secrets, stolen inheritance, and emotional manipulation I'd been blind to my entire life. That Christmas morning was the last day I allowed myself to be someone else's afterthought. It was the day I started asking questions that would lead me not just to the painful truth, but to the freedom I'd always craved and a life finally built on my own terms. Because sometimes the greatest act of courage isn't forgiving those who hurt us, it's choosing to stop living in their shadow. This is my story. And trust me, you're going to want to hear what happened next. I set down my mug, the bitter taste of chocolate lingering on my tongue as anxiety clawed at my stomach. My phone buzzed suddenly, startling me. I glanced down. It was my mother. "Merry Christmas, Emily. We missed you yesterday. Hope you had a quiet, relaxing day." My pulse quickened, my breathing tight in my chest. My fingers hovered over the screen, the gentle glow of her message feeling cold and sharp. Quiet. Relaxing. Did she truly believe her own lie, or did she simply expect me to play along? Taking a shaky breath, I typed out a careful reply, fighting to keep my words neutral, rational, like always. "Mom," Sophie posted photos. "Looks like everyone had a wonderful time at Olivia's house yesterday." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Moments stretched unbearably as the typing indicator flashed on and off, the ellipsis hanging like bated breath. Finally, my phone vibrated again. "Oh, sweetheart, it was last minute," Olivia insisted. "You know how she is. We figured you wouldn't mind, since you're always more comfortable alone anyway." My jaw tightened, heat flushing my cheeks as a bitter laugh escaped me. Comfortable alone. Those words echoed with years of dismissal, with subtle digs buried beneath a veneer of concern. How often had I accepted their gentle insults, quietly absorbing their neglect as if it were my fault? I leaned back, closing my eyes against tears I refused to shed. Memories rushed through me, a torrent of half-truths and quiet injustices. Olivia praised as brave for abandoning her education to travel the world as a yoga instructor, while my own dreams of becoming an artist were laughed off as childish fantasies. The countless hours I'd spent meticulously helping my parents manage their finances, carefully navigating spreadsheets late into the night, unnoticed and unappreciated. Every family gathering, every whispered conversation abruptly silenced when I entered the room. I had always convinced myself I was simply imagining things, overthinking, being overly sensitive. But this blatant lie tore down every rationalization I'd ever built. My phone buzzed again, pulling me from my reverie. This time it was my sister, Olivia. "Don't make drama, Em. It was just Christmas. Stop acting like a victim." Something inside me cracked open. I stared at Olivia's message, reading and rereading those dismissive words as an icy resolve settled deep into my bones. It wasn't just Christmas. It was every holiday, every birthday, every milestone quietly ignored or diminished. It was decades of forced smiles, of internalized blame, of endlessly attempting to earn approval from people who had no intention of ever granting it. I could almost hear my grandfather's gentle voice whispering from distant childhood memories, "Emily, never apologize for being who you are. Your strength is quieter, but it's there, waiting." And right then, on that quiet, sunlit Christmas morning, I felt that strength rise like a tide, fierce and unyielding. Maybe I couldn't change them, but I could finally stop letting them change me. Pulling my laptop closer, I opened a new document, fingers poised over the keyboard. My heart raced with anticipation and a kind of terrifying freedom. If my family was comfortable building their lives around lies, perhaps it was time someone introduced them to the truth. And as I began typing, carefully laying out everything I'd seen and felt, I knew this moment marked a shift, not only in our relationship, but in the woman I was finally allowing myself to become. Because the truth has power. And this time, I wasn't going to hide from it anymore. I spent the next 2 hours crafting the email. Each word felt heavier than the last, each sentence carrying the weight of 32 years of silent sacrifices and overlooked moments. As my fingers tapped across the keys, the bitterness and pain transformed into something sharper, clearer: resolve. I reread the draft carefully, my eyes pausing at lines that felt raw yet necessary. For as long as I can remember, I've made excuses for all of you. I've convinced myself that your favoritism toward Olivia was unintentional, that your casual dismissals were misunderstandings, that your disregard for my feelings was simply me overreacting. But seeing that Christmas photo, your smiling faces without me, made me realize that pretending was my greatest mistake. My finger hovered hesitantly over the send button. Doubt whispered quietly in my ear. Am I being too harsh? Too emotional? But then Olivia's dismissive text flashed again in my mind. Stop acting like a victim. It ignited the fire inside me anew. Without another thought, I clicked send. The immediate silence that followed was deafening. I sat there, heart pounding, waiting. 5 minutes passed, 10, then my phone lit up, vibrating furiously as replies began pouring in. Uncle David, my father's brother, was first. Emily, what's gotten into you? Family sticks together. Don't create unnecessary drama. Then Aunt Laura, more passive-aggressive. We all assumed you knew plans had changed. You shouldn't take things so personally. One by one, each family member chose their side. And, unsurprisingly, none chose mine. My chest tightened painfully until a new email appeared. This one, longer, dripping with condescension, was from Olivia herself. I forced myself to read every word. Emily, if you want to know why you weren't invited, it's because you never seem happy at our gatherings. Everyone always feels uncomfortable around you. I was actually trying to do you a favor. You might want to reflect on why everyone prefers not having you around. I felt the air leave my lungs, my body trembling in disbelief. How effortlessly Olivia had twisted the knife. Her cruelty felt practiced, perfected. And yet, beneath the sting, I sensed desperation, a frantic need to maintain control. Finally, my parents' replies came through simultaneously, united in their stance. Mom, Emily, stop this nonsense immediately. You're embarrassing us. You know we love you equally. Dad, I'm deeply disappointed in you. Family business should stay within family. Delete that email and apologize before this goes further. My breath caught. They hadn't denied my accusations, not once. Instead, they tried to shame me into silence. This wasn't just about one holiday. This was about control, manipulation, and maintaining their carefully constructed facade. I closed my laptop, exhaustion washing over me. Outside, daylight had faded, giving way to shadows that stretched across my quiet apartment. The familiar ache of loneliness crept in, but this time it came with clarity. I wasn't the problem. I'd never been the problem. Suddenly, a gentle notification chimed again, startling me from my thoughts. It wasn't from my family. The name on the screen surprised me. Margaret Richards, an old family friend I hadn't spoken to in years. Her message was short but intriguing. "Emily, I just saw your email. There's something important you need to know. Can we meet tomorrow?" My heart skipped a beat. What could Margaret possibly have to tell me now? Could there be more secrets hidden beneath the surface? Without hesitation, I replied, agreeing to meet. And as darkness fell around me, I realized that this Christmas, one that began with pain and betrayal, had unexpectedly gifted me something priceless: the courage to finally confront the truths I'd long avoided. What Margaret would reveal next, however, was something far darker than anything I could have imagined. And this truth would change everything. I arrived early at the quiet cafe Margaret had suggested, my nerves humming beneath my skin. Outside, winter's chill brushed against the frosted windows, but inside, my body felt feverish with anticipation. I chose a corner booth, partly hidden in shadow, my back against the wall. Old habits of caution died hard. When Margaret walked in, I barely recognized her. She looked older, thinner, her bright eyes softened by time, her once vibrant hair streaked with silver. Yet when she spotted me, a familiar warmth spread across her face. It had been nearly a decade, but her presence immediately calmed something restless inside me. "Emily," she greeted gently, reaching to squeeze my hand, her touch comforting and maternal. "I'm sorry it's under these circumstances." I nodded slowly, unsure how to respond. Margaret had managed my family's finances for years before abruptly retiring. She'd always been kind to me, though my parents had quietly discouraged our friendship. Now, facing her again, I couldn't help but wonder why. After we ordered coffee, Margaret carefully pulled a worn manila envelope from her bag, laying it quietly on the table. Her hands trembled slightly, and her eyes filled with hesitation as they met mine. "I've debated for years whether to share this," she began softly. "But after seeing your email yesterday, I couldn't stay silent anymore." My throat tightened as I stared at the envelope. Something inside it felt heavy, foreboding. "What's inside?" My voice came out barely above a whisper. Margaret's eyes grew misty. "The truth your family never wanted you to see." She slid the envelope toward me. Taking a shaky breath, I opened it, carefully extracting a thick stack of financial documents and old letters. My heart raced as I skimmed the pages: bank statements, transaction records, and legal papers dating back years. What is this?" I stammered, confusion and dread blending in my chest. "Your grandfather, Robert, left you an inheritance when he passed," Margaret explained quietly. "Almost $300,000, specifically meant to fund your education, your dreams, your future. He always saw how your parents favored Olivia, and he wanted to protect you." My vision blurred, my fingers gripping the documents tightly. "But I never knew." "Exactly," Margaret whispered sadly. "Your parents concealed it from you. Your father had control of the funds, and instead of handing them over when you turned 25 as instructed, he quietly transferred everything to Olivia's accounts." Shock rippled through me, sharp and bitter. My mind flashed back to those late nights working overtime, juggling student loans, struggling to pay bills while Olivia traveled the world, posting carefree selfies from Bali yoga retreats. Margaret's voice trembled with regret. "They used your money to finance Olivia's ventures, her yoga studios, expensive trips, everything. Even worse, they made you feel guilty whenever you couldn't help financially, even though you'd unknowingly been funding their lifestyle all along." Tears burned my eyes, hot with disbelief and rage. The betrayal I'd felt yesterday now seemed mild compared to this crushing revelation. My whole life suddenly felt like a cruel joke. My struggles, their criticisms, Olivia's effortless successes, all paid for with my stolen future. Why tell me now? My voice cracked, barely audible. Margaret gently reached out, squeezing my shaking hand. Because I've watched your parents control everyone around them, including you. And yesterday, when you stood up to them, I saw courage. I realized you deserve to know who they truly are, no matter how painful it is. Silence settled heavily between us. Outside, the world carried on, oblivious to the bombshell that had shattered my reality. But inside, I felt something else forming beneath the chaos, a sense of clarity, a surge of determination rising like a fierce wave. What they've done is not only immoral, Margaret added quietly, leaning closer. It's illegal, Emily. Her words sent a chill down my spine. Yet for the first time in my life, fear didn't paralyze me. Instead, I felt a fire sparking in my veins, igniting a fierce determination. My parents had spent a lifetime forcing me to believe I was powerless, insignificant, but they were wrong. I met Margaret's eyes, my voice steady, unwavering. What do I need to do next? In the days following Margaret's revelation, I became consumed by a quiet determination. My small apartment transformed into a makeshift investigation room. Documents scattered across tables, sticky notes scribbled with dates, figures, and connections littering every surface. Fueled by betrayal and a newfound clarity, I meticulously traced each transaction, piecing together the ugly picture of deceit that my family had hidden for years. Every discovery stung like salt in an open wound. The tuition I'd struggled to pay, the nights I'd skipped meals to make ends meet. Each hardship had funded Olivia's carefree adventures and my parents' illusion of success. My heart ached at the cruel irony of it all, yet anger steadily replaced sorrow, sharpening into purpose. At work, I buried myself in tasks, channeling my frustration into productivity. Yet the weight of my secret battle showed. Late one evening, as I hunched over my desk, lost in thought, a gentle knock startled me. I turned to see Lucas standing at the doorway, one of the firm's senior accountants, someone who'd always treated me with quiet respect. "Emily," he said softly, concern evident in his eyes, "you've been here every night this week. Is everything all right?" I opened my mouth to give my usual, dismissive reply, but something about Lucas's sincere gaze unraveled me. Words poured out unbidden, haltingly at first, then with increasing urgency. I told him about the lies, the stolen inheritance, the crushing realization of my family's betrayal. When I finally fell silent, breathing ragged, I expected pity, maybe awkwardness. Instead, Lucas simply nodded, calmly pulling up a chair beside me. "I'm sorry," he said earnestly, "but if there's anyone who can handle this, it's you." His quiet faith struck me deeply. "How can you be so sure?" I whispered. Lucas smiled softly. "Because I've watched you for years, Emily. You're incredibly strong. You just never let yourself see it. Maybe this is your moment." His words lingered with me long after he'd left, igniting a quiet confidence within. Maybe he was right. Maybe strength wasn't a trait you were born with, but something forged from surviving storms exactly like this. The next morning, I contacted Sarah Turner, a reputable estate lawyer known for winning complex financial fraud cases. As I handed over the carefully organized files, she glanced at me, impressed. "You did all this yourself?" Sarah asked, flipping through the documents. "Yes," I answered quietly. "It felt necessary. I needed to understand." Her expression softened, respectful yet sympathetic. "These papers are proof of fraud and financial abuse, Emily. With your permission, I'd like to start proceedings immediately." I hesitated briefly, memories flashing, family dinners, fleeting moments of affection from my parents, Olivia's carefree laugh. Could I really do this? Could I truly be the one who dismantled everything they'd built? But then my heart hardened as I remembered their lies, their manipulation, the way they'd made me feel worthless for decades. It wasn't revenge I wanted. It was justice. Yes, I said firmly. Do it. As Sarah took the case forward, I began to subtly distance myself from my family, quietly preparing for the confrontation ahead. Yet they quickly sensed the shift. My mother's calls became increasingly frantic, my father's emails demanding immediate answers. Olivia's social media posts grew vague but pointed, talking about toxic influences, betrayal, and cutting negativity from her life. She was painting herself as the victim, preparing their audience to see me as the villain. Yet this time, their familiar tactics didn't sway me. Lucas's steady support at work and Margaret's quiet wisdom reminded me daily I was no longer alone. Finally, the night before Sarah planned to send formal legal notices, I received an unexpected call from my mother. Her voice was falsely sweet, yet sharp with tension. "Emily, sweetheart, we've noticed you've been distant lately," she began carefully. "Your father and I would love to come by tomorrow. Clear the air. Fix things." I recognized her tone immediately, the same manipulative charm she'd always wielded. But now it fell flat. "That's a good idea," I replied calmly, my voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through me. "I think it's time we finally spoke honestly." "Wonderful," she replied quickly, seemingly relieved. "I knew you'd come around. Family always finds a way, Emily." After we hung up, I leaned back, heart pounding. Tomorrow, my parents would step into this room expecting their obedient daughter, easily manipulated as always. Instead, they'd find a woman who had finally reclaimed her voice, armed with evidence they could never deny. I wasn't the timid, invisible Emily they created. Not anymore. Tomorrow, they would see exactly what happened when a lifetime of lies finally collided with the truth. The fallout began swiftly, like a sudden storm sweeping across a calm horizon. Within hours, my phone erupted with calls and texts from family members who'd long ignored me, all expressing varying degrees of disbelief, anger, or denial. Olivia's social media became flooded with vague, self-pitying posts about betrayal, jealousy, and family loyalty. My mother's carefully curated online persona collapsed under the weight of rumors, whispers spreading like wildfire through our small community. But this time, their public theatrics didn't faze me. My silence was deliberate, my dignity intact. My battle wasn't fought through gossip or social posts. My weapons were truth, evidence, and quiet resolve. Yet, the pressure escalated quickly. My father began aggressively calling mutual friends, painting me as emotionally unstable, claiming I was having some sort of breakdown. Olivia, never one for subtlety, arrived at my workplace uninvited, creating a scene in the lobby, dramatically pleading for me to stop this madness. Her tears drew sympathetic glances from my coworkers, some who watched with concern, others with morbid fascination. But Lucas quietly intervened, gently guiding Olivia toward the exit, firmly protecting my space. When he returned, his reassuring presence calmed my racing heartbeat. "You okay?" Lucas asked softly, his eyes gentle but fiercely protective. I nodded slowly, exhaustion evident. I knew this wouldn't be easy, but somehow, it still surprises me. He placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You've done something brave, Emily. They're panicking because they can't control you anymore. Hold your ground. You're not alone." In that moment, his quiet belief lifted a weight from my chest, reinforcing my strength when I needed it most. The following morning, I woke to frantic messages from Margaret. My parents had confronted her at her home, aggressively demanding she retract her statements. Though shaken, she remained steadfast, refusing their threats and assuring me her commitment hadn't wavered. "I promised you the truth, Emily," Margaret reassured me later, her voice steady. "I'm not going anywhere." Days turned into weeks, marked by formal investigations and carefully orchestrated legal steps. The authorities moved quickly. Officers arrived at my parents' luxurious suburban home, warrants in hand, seizing financial documents and computers. My father was escorted from his prominent office building in handcuffs, his face pale and stunned, no longer the untouchable patriarch. Olivia's trendy yoga studio, built on the foundations of deceit, was shuttered overnight, its facade of wellness and tranquility now a stark symbol of corruption. Newspapers ran stories about the scandal, headlines reading, "Prominent local family accused of fraud. Hidden inheritance sparks criminal investigation. Family's secrets shatter community trust." Yet as the scandal intensified, I withdrew, not from fear, but for clarity. Alone in my apartment, amid the quiet of newfound solitude, I finally had space to breathe, to reflect. It struck me clearly. Despite the turmoil, I felt strangely at peace. One evening, as I sat quietly by my window, snow began softly drifting down, blanketing the city in pristine white. I watched each flake fall gently, delicately transforming the world below, and realized something profound. My life was undergoing its own quiet transformation. Just as snow cleansed the city, the truth had cleared my heart, leaving behind only what truly mattered. My phone vibrated gently, breaking the calm. A text from Lucas appeared. "Checking in on you. Remember, storms pass, but strength remains. Coffee tomorrow." I smiled softly, warmth blooming in my chest. Lucas had become a steady presence, a friend whose quiet strength mirrored my own emerging confidence. I replied without hesitation, "Yes, I'd like that." In the calm afterward, I began receiving unexpected messages, quiet apologies from distant cousins and former acquaintances, many confessing they too had silently suffered under the shadow of family manipulation. Each message strengthened my resolve, and soon, I created an online community offering resources and support to others facing similar family betrayals. My painful past became a beacon for others, each shared experience gradually transforming my personal pain into collective healing. I wasn't merely surviving. I was thriving, turning betrayal into purpose. Weeks later, I received word that my parents and Olivia had accepted plea agreements. Restitution would be paid, justice served. Yet, when I read the news, no bitterness or triumph filled me, only relief and gratitude for the freedom I'd finally won. On a bright afternoon soon after, Margaret came by to visit, bringing with her a gift wrapped carefully in faded paper. My heart quickened when I opened it, discovering an old photo of my grandfather and me, fishing poles in hand, laughter on our faces, captured in a moment I'd almost forgotten. Margaret's eyes shimmered gently. "He always believed you'd overcome everything, Emily. He'd be so proud." Holding the photo tenderly, my vision blurred with tears, not of pain, but of deep appreciation. My grandfather's silent belief had finally come to fruition. His gift of inheritance hadn't just been financial, it had given me strength, clarity, and ultimately, freedom. That night, standing beneath an endless sky dusted with stars, breathing deeply, I felt the profound weight of peace settle within me. For the first time in my life, I knew exactly who I was and, more importantly, who I would never again allow myself to be. Because true strength isn't about vengeance, it's about reclaiming the narrative, standing firmly in your truth, and finally allowing yourself to become whole. And that's exactly what I did. 6 months later, I stood in my new apartment overlooking the peaceful streets of Denver, coffee mug steaming warmly between my hands. Sunlight spilled softly through large windows, casting gentle patterns across polished hardwood floors, filling the quiet space with golden serenity. The snow-capped mountains, visible on the horizon, symbolized everything I'd worked toward: strength, stability, and unshakable freedom. Moving here had been more than simply leaving behind the city that carried painful memories. It was the final, decisive step toward reclaiming my identity. Life in Denver felt fresh, unburdened by shadows of past betrayal. For the first time in years, I woke each morning genuinely excited for the future, energized by possibilities rather than burdened by expectations. My phone buzzed, and I glanced down with a smile. "Lucas. Settling in all right? Still good for dinner tonight?" I typed back quickly. "Absolutely. Looking forward to it." Our friendship had steadily deepened, his quiet presence transforming into a reassuring anchor in my life. Yet, unlike past relationships overshadowed by insecurity or doubt, Lucas brought out something vibrant in me, encouraging authenticity without pressure. He respected my space, my story, and my strength, celebrating the woman I'd finally become. The community I'd created online flourished. Hundreds of people reached out, sharing their own stories of familial betrayal, manipulation, and ultimately liberation. Each message reinforced the importance of what I'd done, not only for myself, but as proof to others that choosing your own happiness is never selfish. It's brave, necessary, life-changing. One afternoon, I received an unexpected email from a distant cousin named Clara. Her words struck deeply. "Emily, for years, I silently witnessed the family's treatment of you. I'm ashamed I never spoke up. Your courage gave me the strength to finally stand up to my own controlling parents. Thank you for being brave enough for both of us." That simple message warmed me profoundly, reminding me that vulnerability, truth, and courage could ripple outward, impacting lives far beyond my own. As evening approached, Lucas arrived precisely at 7, a gentle knock announcing his presence. When I opened the door, he smiled warmly, eyes sparkling with quiet joy. "I have something for you," he said softly, holding out a small canvas wrapped carefully in brown paper. Curious, I unwrapped it, catching my breath as tears instantly filled my eyes. On the canvas was a delicate watercolor, mountains rising proudly against a golden sky, serene yet resilient, bathed in gentle sunlight. "I painted it myself," Lucas explained shyly, watching my reaction carefully. "I thought, well, it reminded me of you. Strong, beautiful, full of quiet grace." Emotion flooded me, gratitude for his thoughtful gift and for the path that brought us here. "It's perfect," I whispered. "Thank you." Dinner that night was filled with easy laughter, quiet conversation, and a warmth I had once believed unreachable. At one point, Lucas reached gently across the table, touching my hand softly. "You know," he began carefully, eyes sincere, "I admire you deeply, Emily. Watching your strength these past months has been incredible. But you've done so much for everyone else. Don't forget you deserve to be happy, too." His words lingered with me, profoundly healing wounds I'd carried silently for years. That evening, standing together beneath Denver's expansive sky, I felt the gentle pull of something deeper forming between us, something patient, real, built on mutual respect and shared experiences. It wasn't dramatic or rushed. It felt right, as natural and inevitable as breathing. In that quiet moment beneath the stars, Lucas turned to me, voice steady yet filled with emotion. "You once told me your greatest fear was never truly being seen. Well, Emily, I see you. Completely. And what I see is extraordinary." A peaceful silence fell around us. The world hushed as his words resonated deep in my heart. For so long, my life had been defined by invisibility, by quietly accepting whatever crumbs of affection others tossed my way. Now, standing here, truly seen, I understood the immense power and grace of choosing authenticity over approval. As Lucas gently squeezed my hand, a quiet certainty filled me. This wasn't merely the resolution of past pain. It was the beginning of a beautiful new chapter. A chapter written entirely by me. And finally, at long last, I felt whole.